Lead with SummerSlam.
I tried to lead with SummerSlam.
Close out with the Olympics.
There's a new highest paid kicker in the National Football League. Plus, Chiefs might have found their starting left tackle. Let's talk about it.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory, presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network. I'm Kent Swanson. I'm here with Matthew Lane, wearing a Bevo shirt for some reason. Matthew, explain yourself.
Some of us support Xavier Worthy and him elevating himself to the NFL and the Kansas City Chiefs and want him to have a great time. Also, I believe Tucker might back me up here. I kind of pull for Texas. I think Texas is kind of fun. I've had a lot of fun, being on board with Sark since he's been there.
What I was going to say is you called him Bevo?
Bevo?
I've always called him Bevo.
I think it's Bevo.
I hard disagree with that one. I'll do some research on my end, but that's what popped me the most out of all that.
Yeah, you should probably do a little bit of research on that. Thank you for that. Maddie, how are we doing though, my friend?
I mean, I'm doing pretty good. Football started last week. We got to see the new kickoff rule happening. We got to see that in a preseason game, a fake preseason game, but a preseason game nonetheless. We got the Chiefs play this week. By 7 days from now, we will be recapping what happened in a Chiefs game on the lab. It's fun. It's a good time.
I will say we'll be recapping it on Saturday right after it as well.
True.
With the KCSN game.
Let me take that back. 7 days from now, we'll be breaking down winners and losers and stock up and stock down from the Chiefs' first preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And yeah, that's right, Jaguars, because they lost again. I get to change their pronunciation every time they lose to the Chiefs.
Oh, I forgot about that.
But no, yeah, it's a good time. Football starting. We got college ball coming later this month. It's a good time of year. Things are perking up, and we just came off vacation, so it's a good time.
It's less than 3 weeks to college football season, which is just amazing. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. Tucker D. Franklin is beside himself.
Well, because the Tucker D. Franklin Research Department, the D stands for research, just came back, and it is Bevo. So read it in a week, Kent.
Well, I'll just catch an L. Who didn't catch an L today was Harrison Butker. He has been named the highest paid kicker in the National Football League, a 4-year, $25.6 million extension. That includes $17.75 million guaranteed. This deal will tie Butker to KC through 2028. Harrison Butker represented and negotiated the deal himself. That is from Adam Schefter. Matthew, thoughts on Harrison Butker becoming the highest paid kicker in the National Football League?
Big money. Let's go. This is what we need right here. Big contract extension season for the Chiefs. You got all this extra money. This doesn't really save you any cap space or anything like that. However, you come in here, you get this kicker, you get the best kicker in the NFL, you give him a lot of money to keep him around. I don't know. It's a kicker. I can only feign so much excitement about the whole idea. I will say, though, Harrison Butker has been the best kicker in the NFL the past at least 2 seasons, if not a little bit farther. So him getting the largest contract, for kickers in the NFL makes a ton of sense. Age, you would say he's still at his peak of his play. So the whole thing makes sense. And he's played an important part for the Chiefs. I do struggle with the money allocation to kickers in this day and age of football.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk a little bit about. So Harrison Butker in a vacuum, no doubt you pay him. Very good kicker, one of the best kickers, if not the best kicker in the National Football League, and no problem whatsoever with that. As far as just in a vacuum, I get it. Okay. With this particular team in this particular situation with where the Chiefs are at and some of the kinds of contracts that they have coming up, man, it's more of an existential look at the Chiefs and the future of this team that I'm more concerned about than Harrison Butker's contract itself. I just look at this team and they're staring down the barrel of extensions for interior offensive linemen and linebacker. And, oh, by the way, in a year, their top cornerback and their top edge rusher are due for extensions or eligible for extensions. And man, it's tough for me to see, it's tough for me to figure out how the Chiefs are going to make all this work. Right. And that's really where it comes down to. Like, if I am trying to figure things out for the future, I don't know if I'm allocating resources to make, Harrison Butker the highest paid kicker in the National Football League. I might go and try to play the cheap side there, and try to maybe, use that $5 million in cap space you can save and, a decent chunk of guaranteed money as well to try to reallocate that money. I just think there's a lot of decisions this team is having to make in the very near future. And I'm getting a little bit nervous about the allocation of resources towards non-premium.
You're going to make me defend kickers. My entire stance coming onto this was paying a kicker this much money, not ridiculous, but unnecessary. But here you are coming up with a stronger stance than me. So now I have to come in and defend paying a kicker $6.5 million per year. You said saving $5 million. You really want to roll Michael Bagley out there or Blake Gillikin? That's who you're getting if you're saving $5 million. You're getting a rookie kicker.
Not this year, next year. He's under contract this year, Matthew.
I'm just going off his average. I'm just working on his average here, right? Like I don't necessarily want to give a kicker a contract that's averages out to $6.5 million. It's a lot. However, I think if you look to like the middle of the pack, if you go for a middle of the pack NFL kicker, that's only saving like $2 million per year. Again, this is just average per year. Contract structure matters and all that. But like at most, you're saving $2 million going from an average kicker to the best kicker. So like, I guess you could look at it from that perspective as we want to at least feel comfortable with our kicker. So you probably are looking at least league average. And then, like I said, to take that up for that difference from that to Butker is only $2 million or essentially one vet minimum player. Like, is having the better kicker not worth one vet minimum contract? So it's small potatoes. I don't know if I love the concept, and I think it's a bigger picture thing I want to get to in a second. Yeah. But it's small potatoes to be upset, I think, going from a Will Lutz and then paying $2 million more per year to get Harrison Butker. So, yeah, and like I said, like that's why I kind of said at the top, like in a vacuum, it's not that I have like the issue with that. It's just where the allocation of resources. If this team is going to pay 2 interior offensive linemen, as has been reported by Nate Taylor that they're interested in trying to do on top of an inside linebacker, that's where I kind of get a little bit, that's where my nerves exist. It's not that I'm like out on Harrison Butker. It's just what are the opportunity costs lost if the Chiefs do this and an inside linebacker and 2 interior offensive linemen? That's where the question starts lying for me. And so if this is if it's a precursor to more moves, that's, if it's a precursor to this team maybe making some adjustments to their long-term plans, if they're not going to get all 3 of those extended, then sure, I understand. It's just if we look a year from now and they have an inside linebacker, a kicker, and 2 interior offensive linemen tied up with that much money, that's where I just go, I'm not sure I love how this team has made the decisions with the money. That's all. Yeah. And no, I mean, I guess I can kind of get it, right? Like if you look at the Cowboys have the Aubrey, the kicker, on a rookie contract, or even like Jake Moody for the 49ers, like these guys are very competent kickers that you would feel good going into any playoff game or on a Super Bowl run with them, and you would be saving a lot of money. And if you can then spend all of that money, which is your $5 million that you were talking about, into paying for a Trey Smith, paying a Creed Humphrey, a Nick Bolton, whomever it's going to be, if that becomes a difference of keeping one of those guys or losing them, then yeah, every single time pay the player, not the kicker, in my opinion. But I do think it's a little tricky to know you're in a Super Bowl window. And this has kind of been my whole point. And when we talked about Donovan Smith in the left tackle spot all year, this team's trying to win a Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl, not or bust, but this team is making a run for the Super Bowl this year. You want to do everything you can to make sure they are ready for that. And I understand that Butker was under contract this year, no matter what, but for the next couple of years, this team, it's all about the Super Bowl, having the kicker most likely to hit the clutch field goals, most likely to show up when it matters the most. I understand the spending if it doesn't come at a cost for some other positions going forward. Yeah. It's more just like the totality of it. I'm just really, I'm interested in, like, if
And here's the thing: the Chiefs have part of the reason the Chiefs are in this position is because they have drafted tremendously. Like they have given themselves a fantastic opportunity where they've got a blue chip center, a really good guard, a pretty good inside linebacker. And oh, by the way, you have premium positions due up the very next season with Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis if you want to try to do something. And that's where it's like, hey, look, this is the byproduct of drafting well. Well, it's just also a little bit just like, hey, there's a lot of things coming down the pike here that are the bill's going to be coming due on these classes. So, they obviously have a plan. I'm just fascinated if this is a move that is done, if all three of those big deals wind up getting done. I don't think they do. And maybe because they are, all three aren't, maybe that's why they're moving and making Harrison Butker highest paid kicker in football, which, by the way, hey, look, he's the best kicker or one of the best kickers in football. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve his money. Yeah. Okay, fine. You know what? Yeah, let's speak with our chest. Justin Tucker can hold this L just like he did in the AFC Championship game, trying to get in Patrick Mahomes' head. The audacity of that.
Now, I want to go to a bigger picture topic here, and I think a kicker contract to be the highest paid kicker in the NFL plays very clearly into this. Boy, the Chiefs and positional value is just an uphill battle at this point in time, right? And Joe Thuney, which ended up being a good signing, and especially because it came in before the guard market bloomed. Now, realistically, Thuney played through the majority of his contract, the initial contract, before it ballooned. So a fine contract, but still paying a ton of money to a guard. A lot of draft capital to linebackers is top 100 picks. First round running back, getting, I guess, now a kicker. They are just doing a lot, paying safeties routinely, a decent chunk, a decent contract to safeties. The Chiefs have been spending a lot of assets, whether money or draft, on non-premium positions, according to the masses, over the past 5-6 years. And hey, it's led to a lot of Super Bowl wins, a lot of winning seasons. Yep. So you can't really nitpick too much, but I just find it fascinating that they just sit here and they stare at all of this data that comes out that tells you which positions matter and which ones don't. And they just quite simply seem to ignore it, if not go as far as doing the opposite.
Right. And I think it's, in some ways, I think it's refreshing in that this team has done such a good job of, interior offensive linemen, linebackers. They aren't the highest positional value players, but the Chiefs nailed them. They absolutely nailed those picks. They were able to get 2 starting interior offensive linemen for 4 years. They were able to get a starting Mike linebacker, who is one of the big leaders on the defensive side of the football, in the same draft. And they kind of pivoted away and said, let's just try to build up solid players and let Mahomes be the ceiling of this team and get to make these decisions when it comes down the pike, when the opportunity, comes, when it's time to actually make the choices and the decisions on these guys. It's a good problem to have because they were able to, again, build a incredible interior offensive line. I'll argue the best interior offensive line in football in doing so. The decision at running back, sure, that one didn't work out. But I think, this team has been willing to maybe spend at non-premium positions, and it's paid off for them. I think with guards hit the market a lot more frequently, which is why, it's an opportunity to pay blue chip players sometimes because teams are more willing to move on from guards at times. And the Chiefs did that with Thuney. And it was a correction to make sure that they never had offensive line issues ever again. And, signing at least one of these 2 guys along the interior would be a step in the right direction in doing that too. But yeah, it's been fascinating to see how this team has approached positional value over the last, few years.
Yeah, that's to their credit. And I think this is a big part of it too. And when you listen to Brett Veach talk about, especially in the draft, but even free agent signings, the value that he sees at these positions, the talent becomes too hard for them to pass up at the price. And this is, again, draft capital or money that they have to pay for these guys. So you say guards have been hitting free agency, like somebody like Joe Thuney does hit free agency. It's not very often that the best player or the second best player at his position hits the open free agency, right? And they go and they sign the guy that does. you look at all the linebackers they've drafted, they've kind of been plus value towards the like consensus boards and stuff that everybody looks at, or even like Drew Tranquil, what little they paid for him these past 2 years for the type of play they're expecting. It's like, yeah, they might be investing in non-premium positions, but they are getting guys that are very talented to play them because that's what's available. And when you are constantly working with less money to overall available because you have to pay a quarterback and a tight end and tackles and a defensive tackle a lot of money, or you're constantly working with a 32nd, 64th, 96th pick and so on, it gets a little bit harder to only go, to go after premium positions. So you find the next best talent. And then you have this guy, I don't know if you've heard of him, Steve Spagnuolo, and then this other guy, Patrick Mahomes, that make everything else right? They make all the missing pieces, all the lack of over high-end talent, the lack of big money guys at these premium positions. Okay. It's still just fascinating to see a team that has been a top, like at the very forefront of success in the NFL, completely fly in the face of all of like the advanced analytics in terms of who you pay, how you pay them, and what you're supposed to do.
I think the good thing for the Chiefs is that, and I think part of what helps offset this a little bit, and yes, I know I'm saying like the decisions on the cornerback position are coming, but they have seemed to identify, players in later rounds that are going to allow them to contribute at such a key important position at corner where other teams tend to spend a lot more money. And so that helps offset some of the things they could potentially do with some of the decisions that they got to make here in the next, next couple of years. So that does facilitate. And also what could potentially facilitate is finding your left tackle in the second round of the 2024 NFL draft. And that is something that could be the case. It appears the Chiefs have found their left tackle, Matthew.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, all of the snaps for Wanya Morris, or for the left tackle spot, seem to be going to Kingsley Sumatea, not Wanya Morris. It doesn't really seem like it's been much of a competition up until this point. It seems pretty straightforward that the team is giving Kingsley Sumatea all of the opportunities to win the job, and or he has earned all of the opportunities to win the job from Wanya Morris. And I will say this, like the longer camp goes, I think you do start to see Kingsley, figuring some stuff out a little bit by little bit. Like this past day, Tucker got some video of him in some one-on-one reps. And while some of the issues in terms of like how he recovers and pass protection are still the same, you see the progress. He's now a little bit quicker off the snap. He's not getting beat off the ball by the defensive end. So now when he is recovering, he's just doing so by actually recovering and not having to lunge and reach because he's out of position. So you do see the wheels turning in his head. You do see him getting better. And at this point, they really haven't given Morris a shot to come take that spot from him. So if things keep going this way, like it feels pretty much like a done deal that Sumatea is going to be the starting left tackle for this team.
Yeah. I think, just the fact that it was a split rep opportunity between Kingsley and Wanya early in the process kind of gave me a glimpse and a hint that they might be trending in this direction in the first place. Just seems like, when there's, when there's a desire to get a rookie on the field, there's a split snap opportunity very quickly in these processes. And Kingsley got that early, and Kingsley's kind of held on to that position for the last, week and a half here. I think, we've kind of talked a little bit about this over the last couple of weeks with the Kingsley situation, but, I think they needed to see probably glimpses to believe that he was on a trajectory that would have him ready to be a solid contributor in the first week of the season. Cause I don't think this team is just messing with Kingsley's, or with Patrick Mahomes' backside. They're not going to just completely, get cute with the blind side of Patrick Mahomes. There has to be some level of belief and confidence in him. And I think, he's obviously made an impression. You hear some of the players talk about him and, his preparation and his desire to be great. You hear the coaches speak on him a little bit. I think that's the kind of stuff that probably stood out and gave him an opportunity. Those are things that we're not really privy to. Yeah, it's not always been pretty rep over rep with Kingsley Suamataia, but it is, like to Maddie's point, it's gotten better. I think it has gotten better as training camp, and that's what you want to see. And I think that's the belief that this team had in the trajectory of him and where this was heading by September, trusting their instincts to say, okay, I think by the time that this game one, he's going to be playable.
Yeah. And I mean, I have more reservations than I think you do. And I still, like I said, when I go through and see them, as much of the camp stuff as we can, he looks like a second round rookie left tackle trying to play. And that makes me very nervous as a fan of a team that is whole goal is the three-peat. Like they've said it coming off the field from last year's Super Bowl, right? Their entire goal is to get 3 in a row. And it really seems like going in with a second round rookie left tackle and not really a good backup plan, not an option B, and nothing else you can do. Although, again, Donovan Smith,
baby.
Worst comes to worst, you can maybe sign him whenever, but it just does make me a little nervous that you were going in that, I don't even want to say bad off, but just so unknown at a position, because he is a guy that, like, when you watch him, even just watching him move at left tackle, like you see the flashes of the elite athleticism that everybody loved, but you also see this is a guy that is still trying to process a lot. He's thinking a lot, and you hope with game experience that gets better, but this team can't really afford to lose games to get game reps for a player, right? They can't afford to have their left tackle cost them games throughout this process, because again, their goal isn't to get to being a Super Bowl contender. Their goal isn't to win the division or to make the playoffs. Their goal is to win the Super Bowl. So it's a really fine line. It feels like they're trying to go. And I am a little surprised it's come so early that they seem to be not giving it. I don't want to say it hasn't been a competition, that he hasn't earned it, but it seems pretty clear to me that they have always wanted Sua Mateo, whether this is a talent-based thing, an off-field thing, a character thing, attitude thing, practice habits, whatever it is, it just seems pretty clear that they want him to really run with this competition and win it. And it seems like he's on the right track, right? Like he's definitely not getting worse. He seems to be learning throughout camp based on the little bit that we see. So that's the good sign. Just, I do have a little bit more worry than I think some other people do.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not that there's not reason for concern. I think anybody that's not at least a little bit like, hey, we're throwing a left tackle out there, or a rookie left tackle out there, is not acknowledging that it could be bumpy at times. It could be, and it probably will. There's going to be some growing pains. It's in the best interest of this organization for Kingsley Sua-Mata'ia to win this tackle position, though. And if they can get cost-controlled left tackle for 4 years, that's a big advantage that they have to help maybe try to figure out some of the other things that they have to do in the next couple years. I don't want to pretend or not acknowledge that, that there won't be some growing pains, because I 100% believe that there will be some struggles. I just think that this team has played with some struggles at the left tackle position over the last couple of years as it is. And, they've played with substandard tackle play before. And if this team can help protect Kingsley and the other 4 can take care of their business, I think that can go a long way in helping support a left tackle as he transitions to the National Football League. So, I think it's, I don't think it's always going to be pretty, but I think it's in the best interest of this organization if Kingsley Sua-Mata'ia can become somebody capable of playing at a high level at the end of this year, because that could go a long way just for this year and, in the future of this organization. So anything else on Kingsley in the tackle position, Matthew?
Nope. I think we are all good with the tackle spot. I'm excited to see what it looks like. I'm excited to get to the preseason, see where we're going. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe if there is struggles come the preseason, whether it's game 1, 2, whatever it is, maybe you do see a switch to Morris. Maybe you see interest in somebody like a Donovan Smith, but it has been a little eye-opening that throughout training camp, Kingsley seems to be getting more and more reps, while Morris seems to be getting less and less. And then it was just these past today, really specifically, that I just saw okay, here's some very clear one-to-one things that I saw Kingsley do at the start of camp that have now gotten a little bit better now. So that gives you, and that's something that they're seeing, obviously, Andy Reid's talked about it. So that gives you a little bit more, not more hope, but that gives you the hope that things will get better as the season goes on. It's just real nervous not seeing Wanya Morris come up and put a little bit better fight for the spot when that kind of makes your only option a rookie.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. KCSN.substack.com.
With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone in any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts with you. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNlab. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNlab. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNlab. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
The kind of synergy we have with Mint Mobile right now. Tucker D. Franklin has a cell phone and a text line devoted to you. You can text the number 913-407-6524. Tucker will talk to you if you're lonely. He will give you suggestions for football teams for the college football game if you want to start a dynasty. He is doing all kinds of tremendous work, both with the KCSN hotline and at training camp. So text Tucker 913-407-6524. I got a text message. He was giving. We took some questions for 21 questions this week from the Mint Mobile text line too. Ooh. So some of those have wound up on there as well. So
Matthew, Tucker, you will be getting some as well from the Mint Mobile hotline. You have some for 21 questions this week.
That's all I ever wanted. Before we move on, Kent, I want to catch up. We had some questions come through the chat. I just wanted to answer. If we can answer some of these while we get going through here. Julia asked, Felix and Udike Uzama expectations, Kent?
Not like super high, but like
big gasp.
Yeah, well, bigger than the reaction here. I think the hope is, he's a rotational pass rusher that gives you a little bit of juice up the arc. I'd say 3, 4, 5 sack season type guy, and that would, a 5 sack year as a second year 22-year-old kid would be a good season for him. So you take that and, hopefully he can be a contributing rotational pass rusher. I think that's the hope.
Yeah, my expectations are relatively low right now because I've been a little off put by how Steve Spagnuolo spoke about him slow starting to camp, saying that they needed to essentially see an impact and a pass rush plan and violence. Like just Spags had a lot to ask out of him that I felt like was pretty basic stuff that you kind of should have. And then also hearing a slow start to camp wasn't great. I know some people have said that he's kind of looked pretty good at camp, but like every time I see it, he's kind of running with the twos. He hasn't really broke into the first team defensive rotation like a lot. Like he hasn't been there frequently. And that's even without Charles Omenihard already not here. So if he's not getting pass rush reps over Dana, over Karlaftis in times, or not letting the Chiefs get into their kind of NASCAR-like packages, I don't know. That it just leaves me wondering if we're not in for another year of pretty stark development, and you kind of hope down the stretch he provides a change of pace. So like, I'm not saying there's I'm not saying he's not going to grow, but I don't know what my expectations are. My expectations are just like, hey, maybe he sees the field in important games and important times now and not just garbage cleanup time, right? Like that's where my expectations are set right now, which I'm assuming he will. I do think that we had 2 more questions in here coming from, I got one from Jack. Best left tackle of the last 10 years. I think it's Eric Fisher. I don't think it's particularly close. I saw somebody say Orlando Brown Jr. I don't think he was that good for the Chiefs. I think it's pretty clearly Fisher. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And Orlando Brown Jr. wasn't even the perfect fit for the Chiefs. It's just they were trying to fill that spot, I think, and they kind of ran out of options, and so they made sure to address that tackle position. And that's I do want to add one little comment because I think it speaks to Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and I think it speaks to Kingsley Suamataia. I don't think the Chiefs will let the situation get to a point where it's drastically impacting their ability to win a Super Bowl. So like, I think if it gets push comes to shove later in camp, if they don't feel confident in these guys at the left tackle spot, they will go out and they will call Donovan Smith up and see if they can get him back in Kansas City. They have $15 million in cap space.
Will they call Emmanuel Ogba?
They can't anymore. But
Okay.
I could see them go maybe looking in the trade market. I could see them doing a lot of things here to try to address the edge position if they feel like they need somebody in the near future. So that was just like a kind of a quick additional comment I just wanted to make about those two.
Nope, I like it. I got one more question. I'm sorry, because I
Fine.
thought supposed to be on the rundown and it got skipped. Well, this one was supposed to be on the rundown, I think. I just want to talk. How many wide receivers are making the roster? We've been pretty steadfast in the wide receivers, and that was from Micah. We've been pretty steadfast in the wide receivers that we think make the roster. We said it last week. We kind of had the same guys. We've had, Rice, Worthy, Brown, Justin Watson, McCole Hardman, and then we've kind of gone with Kadarius Toney and Nico Remigio have kind of been the 7 that we are looking at strongly being in contention for that spot. However, I will say this, Sky Moore's been getting a lot of opportunities since we said that. He's been working in a lot more at the 1s and 2s. There's been some really good. There's been some bad that maybe hasn't been posted as much. The other guy that's intriguing me again, and by God, if it's not training camp time, is Justin Ross. Again, more reps at the 1s. And we talked about it a little bit on that show, though. If they want somebody that has a different build than literally everybody else not named Justin Watson, he is the guy. And so I just wanted to ask, are you still pretty strong that that Ross and Sky Moore are strongly on the outside of the top 7? Or do you think it's a little bit closer than we may have said last week?
I think there's more of a chance. I think there's more of a chance today than I did last week. I think it's still tricky from a roster construction standpoint, from a return perspective. The special teams perspective. Ross probably isn't giving you much in the special teams. Sky might be able to give you a little bit on spare.
When Ross was healthy, he did play a fair bit of special teams. Now, obviously, wasn't as a returner, but he did play a fair bit when he was healthy last year.
Little gunner. Did he play gunner? Yeah.
I don't remember what he played. I just looked at the snap counts. I'd assume it's mostly on kickoffs, and he's probably not your widest guy. And I don't know how that works now with the new rules when there's going to be even bigger emphasis on tackling. I would assume you don't want him running full speed into contact. So maybe he's actually in tight on the kickoff team. Maybe he's one of the little wing guys for the punt units. I don't know exactly where he played. I'd have to go back and look, but I did see that he played a fair bit of snaps. And if you look at it game by game, he was playing, 5, 6, 7 special team snaps per game pretty consistently.
Is the technical term little wing guys?
Yes.
Gotcha. I think there's a chance, that they could get back into the mix, and it's still a long way to go. And I think Andy even made that comment that there's a long way to go here. We've still got 34 days until kickoff, something crazy. We got a decent amount of time left.
Quick. Let's say it's Ross. Who does he surpass on the depth chart if he's going to make it of the 7 that we've kept?
Nico Remigio.
Okay. I'm going to go with McCole.
McCole's fair too.
Yeah. The reason I still staying strong on Nico, and I guess this kind of works for McCole, but they haven't used it that way. I feel like Nico is got the ability to return punts and kicks because the kick return's different a little bit now. If you have a guy that can return both and you don't have to have a separate returner for both, I think that probably is a little helpful. And you kind of know what McCole is. I understand there's the trust factor, so maybe that plays a role. I'm gonna go with McCole for now. We'll kind of see how the rotation stuff goes on. But yeah, I just think Ross might be working his way back into it.
So I remember last year the Chiefs were able to trade Amir Smith-Marset after a really strong training camp or after a strong preseason performance. Part of me wonders if the decision-making process is affected slightly by who they think they can get on the practice squad and who they can't. And even if they wanted to, even if they wanted to keep, they're still going to be 2 on the outside looking in. It's going to be one of these guys that we're kind of talking about. Maybe you trade one. Maybe you make your life just a little bit easier and you try to get
another 7th.
Pick up a 7th or even a conditional pick of some kind. Based on, the training camp performances like that wouldn't be because this team's not keeping 9. And if they don't think they can get one on the practice squad, then you're not getting to keep 8 anyway. So maybe move on from one, and just trade one away. So, there's a lot of time. There's injuries that could occur here. Unfortunately that's the case. It can happen. So, there's there's some scenarios that could play out. I think you're right. I think it's not locked in at 7. I think there's a good, strong competition there for some of these other pass catchers.
Yeah, the biggest one I just want to talk about was Ross, because again, like we mentioned it briefly, but like he has a different game than all these other guys. So if you want that, if you kind of want what MVS had, or Justin Watson, if he does go down, it's like, you have to remember, Justin Watson gets hurt again. Who runs his routes, right? And like maybe that's when you would hope Ross, you bring him up off of your practice squad if he's there or whatever. But like, who takes Justin Watson's role if he's not able to play? They don't have anybody that has his size. They can kind of go run over the middle of the field, that kind of do the things that he does. So like it might make sense to find a spot for Ross, especially if he's willing and capable of playing special teams. Like I just I don't want to say I've done a full 180 and put him like in to the top 50, the top 7 wide receivers that I would predict, but I think it's maybe a little bit closer than I gave it credit to last week, just because the more I thought about it, like you can't just have one guy that can play that role. And I guess Rashee Rice could maybe do it, but still, it's just, I like the idea maybe of having another bigger wide receiver and not all guys that are, 5'11", 200 pounds.
I'd also be, I mean, yes. But also, is he going to be on the game day roster? Like,
maybe not until someone gets injured, right? It's a possibility he's not there until someone gets injured, but like having that guy available, I don't know if Justin Ross would get signed off the practice squad or whatever to somebody else's team, but if he does, do I feel great about Cornell Powell being called up from the practice squad to take those snaps? No, not particularly, right? And all the other guys they have are, again, 5'11", 190-pound wide receivers. So like, just keeping Ross around might kind of make a little bit of sense just from a body type perspective.
Going to be a fun, and these games will matter. These games will matter for helping stack this wide receiver room. We'll talk more about that on Wednesday, I'm sure, but we're going to talk about the cornerback position right now. A lot of injuries, a lot of guys in, a lot of guys out, a lot of things happening. It's still a lot of young players competing and trying to stack themselves on the cornerback depth chart. Maddie, what are your thoughts right now?
You think the wide receiver position is kind of hard to figure out. The quarterback spot's even harder, as if it's a lot more difficult. Trent McDuffie's been great in all the training camp. He's going to be great no matter what. And then you just have like guys after guys after guys competing for the cornerback 2, 3, 4, 5 spot. And every other practice, it seems like somebody's getting working with the ones, and sometimes they play pretty good. Other times it seems like they don't. Joshua Williams has been like available this whole time and hasn't really separated himself, it doesn't feel like, which isn't good news. Like, right, he's been the one guy that's been healthy. Kelvin Joseph's missed a couple practices. Jalen Watson's still not back. Najee Johnson's missed a couple practices. Keith Taylor, I don't think, has missed any time, but like he hasn't spent substantial time with the first team. Same thing with Echo Boydo, but Joshua Williams hasn't separated himself from those guys so much so that he's always the cornerback 2, or that they're not working in with him in spots. So it's just, nobody's running away with those spots. It's like, it's going to be interesting to see how it filters down. I still think that they want Najee Johnson to get an opportunity to be healthy enough to get that chance. I think they really got excited for something they saw last year in training camp. And this year, it sounds like he's trying to work off some rust. And then now he's kind of battling some soreness in the leg that he's working back from injury. So is he ready? I just don't know what's going to happen with this position at this point in time, because nobody seems to be really stepping up all the way.
This is one of those things where I don't think we're going to get a ton of clarity on it either, because this position's also always been a little bit mysterious, I think. I mean, Najee Johnson was getting very real run last year and trusted as a guy that potentially be a starting cornerback for this team last year. You heard Justin Reed make the comment that he was pushing to start, and he kind of came out of nowhere from behind the scenes. We got to see a lot of, this team got to see a lot of passing reps when, we necessarily didn't get to, right? And so they've gotten to see a lot of different looks of these guys out here. It's confusing from the outside looking in, because there doesn't seem to be a consistent line to who is going to be in there. Kelvin Joseph even. And part of it, I think, is probably because not everyone's been healthy at the same time. That's part of the problem too with all this, is like, you don't really know where everyone stands, because there's always been somebody, Jalen Watson or Najee or Kelvin Joseph, one of these guys has been out of contention, or, out of practice at any given point. So like, that's making it a little bit more tricky to see how these guys are stacking up too, I think.
Not getting to see them all play together, not getting to see them all practice after practice, like run the same reps to see who's being consistent, who's taking the coaching better, because it's all been a little sporadic. Like there's just so many things working against trying to even guess how this is going to work. Fascinated is one word for it, because I do want to see how it comes out, but it's a little concerning as well, right? I think on one hand, I've heard some people kind of say this that cover the league as a whole. The Chiefs were kind of in a unique spot last year where you knew L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie were your corner 1 and 2. But then any given series, any given play, the opponent didn't really know who the third corner was going to be. You didn't know who was going to be the Waldo to go out there. So if it's Joshua Williams, you might want to go try him in some 50-50 catch opportunities because he's struggled with some ball catching there. You might want to run some switch releases. You might want to try to stress him and make him kind of be the guy that has to pick which place to cover, because he isn't the most assignment sound cover man. Whereas if it's Watson, maybe you want to try him deep because he's not as athletic. Maybe you want to try to make him, work against double moves because he doesn't maybe have the speed or the quickness to keep up with that. And you're maybe not trying to challenge him as a tackler, or you're not trying to challenge his IQ, right? Like you just attack them different ways and you never knew who it was going to be. So on some levels, I think that probably played in the Chiefs' favor and let them get a little bit better play out of Watson and Williams than they would if they were just thrown out there every single series. That said, you can't do that with your cornerback 2 and 3. You can't have this giant rotation of 4 different corners that play those spots. And it also worked because you had 2 shutdown corners on the field at the same time as them, not just one, and with McDuffie. So they're going to have to pick. Someone's going to have to win this job. And what you don't want is to get to the very end and then just be like, well, I guess it's Watson because he's got, because he's got the most snaps. He's got the most experience in the system. Or I guess it's Williams because he's the healthiest, right? Like that's what you don't want it to be, just somebody just because the other guys didn't win it. You want someone to really take that job. And I just don't think we've gotten that yet.
Yeah, we haven't yet. And there's time, and you wonder the longer that they don't add a veteran, like what's the comfort level? Do they want to play mix and match? Like, what do they want to do? What's the line of thinking here?
I don't think they're adding. I think they like enough of these young guys. It's just they like enough of them, but they don't love any one of them. And that seems to be a weird spot to be stuck in. Like they don't want to just say, Joshua Williams, you've been so good, here's the job. They don't want to say, Jalen Watson, you've been so good in your playtime. When you come back, this is your job. They don't want to say that anyone's earned it yet, but I don't think that they feel like Kamal Haddon, Nick Jones, Echo Boydo, Keith Taylor, all these guys aren't good enough that they don't have the answer. So it's like they're in a weird spot of we think we have the answer, but we don't know who it is yet.
Yeah. And I still maintain I'm still interested in a lot of the guys that they have out here. Like I still am interested in Kelvin Joseph and Keith Taylor to a degree, who I think got some run with the first today. And I mean, they've got some guys that have plenty of snaps under their belt. So, I mean, you hope that the floor is good enough for them. They've got 4 defensive backs that have been there since 2022. 4 corners have been there since 2022. This is their 3rd season. This is that group that's stuck in together. And then maybe a Kelvin Joseph can ascend. Maybe, a Nick Jones or Kamal Haddon can ascend too. So, although, I mean, Nick Jones, I think, has been more of an inside guy. But I don't know. It's weird how I think the preseason games might be a little bit more important than they've been in a few years, just because of there's so many young, unproven guys at a few positions that are really trying to make a roster, which is fun.
Yeah. I think for the offensive side, I don't think the preseason games are going to change a whole lot. And we might sit here and look at the game afterwards and say, oh, wow, this guy played really good. How do they not keep him? Or how does he still be the third string or whatever on offense? But for the most part, I think Andy Reid's kind of gotten to the point where they see enough. They're going to put the right guys in there because they have a pretty good idea of what they want. And I think if you look through there, they have a pretty good idea of most of this stuff. Defensively, not that this is a bad process or anything like that, but specifically at the corner spot, I just go back and listen to Merritt and I listen to Spags talk both last year and this year's. I just don't think they know. I don't think they have their answers yet. I think Andy Reid knows who he wants to play left tackle. I think he knows who he wants to be as wide receivers. And as long as nothing crazy happens, that's who it's going to be. But on the defensive side, I think Spags is still waiting, like we said, for someone to step up. Merritt's still waiting for somebody to take that next step and just it click and for them to get it. So yeah, preseason rolls around and Echo Boydo comes out and plays lockdown every single game and he gets tried and he shows all these skills and stuff that they want. I'm not ruling him out making this team and being the cornerback 2, cornerback 3, or whatever it is, or it might be Watson, or it might be like, it could be literally any of these guys. So yeah, it definitely feels like the preseason this year of top to bottom, but especially on the defensive side of the ball might attempt to settle some of these positions.
I can't wait. There is a lot of young players I'm excited to watch in this preseason. There's a few I'm hoping get a lot of run. We'll talk about that on Wednesday, though. Looking forward to talking about that on Wednesday. Before we get out of here, though, the NFL 100 top 10 did release. The Chiefs had 3 players. Unfortunately, they did not have the number 1 player. Well, maybe unfortunately isn't the right word, because it might be unfortunate for the National Football League. The players have voted Patrick Mahomes, the greatest player in the history of our sport, as the number 4 player in 2023. Christian McCaffrey, Lamar Jackson, and Tyreek Hill all rated ahead of him in this democratic process. What are you doing, NFL? Like, what are we doing here?
So, okay, let's get the blanket defense out there first. They do vote on this towards the end of the regular season. They vote on this, I think it's like between week 16 and 18 or something, right? Like, so just get that out there. Players vote on this at the end. So yeah, part of it's a popularity contest. I think Travis Kelce said it on his New Heights podcast, or maybe it was Jason that said it. Like, sometimes they don't answer it. Sometimes they get this thing shoved in their face and they ask them to circle it. And like, they circle the guys, or they write in the names as soon as they quickly. And it's going to be friends or teammates or what. Like, sometimes you don't take it seriously. Sometimes you do. Your mindset matters. Very few people, rarely, spend real time with it. That being said, to come out and do this NFL top 100, and I don't care if it's at the end of the regular season, I don't care if it's week 16 or whatever, and to look at this list and not only not get Patrick Mahomes number 1, where he was the year before, coming off of a Super Bowl MVP champion, comes back. The Chiefs are clearly going to the playoffs again. They're clearly on the path to at least attempt to repeat. He's playing with, the 3 Stooges at wide receiver for the most part, and still got this team getting ready to go into the playoffs as one of the top seeds, one of the Super Bowl favorites, if not the Super Bowl favorite. And to be in that spot and look there and write a running back's name down, to write another quarterback's name down, which I get it, he won the MVP, so okay, fine. And then to write a wide receiver who plays in Miami, who they can't win a game after Thanksgiving. It's crazy. I don't understand. I don't understand how enough people didn't have voted for all these other people to get them above Patrick Mahomes. I was a little flabbergasted by that, Ken. I'm not going to lie.
Should be. I think there is a little bit of fatigue. There's a little bit of petty that exists. Like, we know no Bengal put Patrick Mahomes on the list. And so if you slowly just accumulate a few of these teams that are just so petty because the Chiefs are just that much better than them and they can't do anything about it, and they're incapable of collecting rings because Patrick Mahomes is just that much better than you or your quarterback or your team, then if you start getting petty enough, maybe this is the byproduct of that. Just a few teams that refuse to be truthful with themselves because they can't accept the fact that they can't win a ring because Patrick Mahomes stands in their way. I think there's some petty. I think it's pure spite and pettiness just existing now. I think there's a lot of people that don't want to respect him. I think there's a lot of people that don't like him, and they refuse to acknowledge him as their tribal chief. That's what I think is going on right now. So, Cope, National Football League, please continue to give Patrick Mahomes the fodder he needs, the fuel he needs. I hope that number 4 sits in Bobby Stroop's lab while he's working on Patrick Mahomes and helping him get ready for this season and helping him during the season, remind him of what the National Football League thinks of him. I hope we get the 4 count on Lamar Jackson on his head in week 1. The juices are flowing a little bit here, folks. The audacity of these players, the pettiness.
That kind of felt like the real ramp up this season.
Jamar.
That kind of felt like the real kid. Like, I've seen some people say it like this, the hype leading up to the NFL season for Chiefs fans, but then some people have said the whole league, but for Chiefs fans have seemed a little bit more mundane this year. And I think that probably does come when your team that you've been rooting for has constantly been at the top. They're going for this back-to-back. They are winning. And I get that, but it really felt like this coming out and having Mahomes fall in at fourth kind of like ignited. And this is a small sample size. Like I'm talking social media here, or like, your friends or family that you talk football with a little bit, but it seems like that's kind of ignited the start to the season. Now, all of a sudden, nobody can get, like, we all are wanting football to start, but now we're like really wanting it to start. Now everyone's really looking forward to that week 1 game, like to see what happens, because this is just one of the most absurd things that's ever happened. And to your point, like, yeah, I could see some pettiness, but like, even when you go back to the Jamar Chase interview, though, he very clearly was saying Patrick Mahomes is the best player. Like, there was no doubt that's what he was saying. Now, I don't know if he wrote that down. I don't know, but the way they phrased it, it seemed like he did, right? It's just, at what point, like, why are players being spiteful about this? I don't know. It's strange. It's just a strange thing to me that enough players went out there and did that. And I've seen, Lamar Jackson wins a lot of popularity awards, I think, with the NFL. NFL players do seem to really like Lamar Jackson. And so if you want to say Patrick Mahomes finished second to Lamar Jackson this year, coming off of his second MVP, which was one of the worst statistical MVPs that we've ever had, fine. It's fine. I could have dealt with the second and not been like, okay, this is absolutely terrible. But fourth, behind Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, it's just,
the Chiefs have won 2 rings since Tyreek Hill was a Chief. Like, they didn't need him. So he's not, I mean, he's good. He's not the reason they won 2 rings is because the best player on the planet and the best player in the history of the sports in Kansas City, not a 4, he's not even the top rated quarterback. Like, what are we doing here?
I don't know how we got. I don't know how we got there. I really don't. And like, I'm with you. I like that they did it. It's kind of cool that they did this, because like, now, not that Mahomes needed the extra motivation, but like, this is definitely going to throw a little bit more in there. This is definitely going to make the pettiness go up. You ever had a small worry about like the Chiefs being a little complacent and just trying to like coast to get to the playoffs, which good teams do in all sorts of sports? Tell you what, you want to go and change that. Go ahead and have a guy coming off of back-to-back Super Bowl MVPs, heads and tails the best player in the NFL. It's not even close. Nobody's debating you whatsoever. And then come and tell him that his peers voted him the 4th best player, behind a player that he beat in the wild card round, behind a player he beat in the AFC Championship round, and then a guy that he beat in the Super Bowl. You're going to sit in there and tell him that he's worse than all those guys and he's the 4th best player in the NFL? Ooh. That's a tough thing to put out there for 31 teams that are trying to make them lose.
I've said a lot. I don't think the Chiefs will let what happened last year happen again. Like, I don't think the leadership in that room is just going to let them be that poor in the regular season. I think they're going to hit the ground running offensively, and the roster is constructed in a way that I don't think these struggles will become a big problem offensively. And then you add this. I like this feels like and I'm going to compare it to a year in which they didn't win the Super Bowl, but run it back was working. The best record in the history of the Chiefs organization in the regular season happened in the run it back year, and then the offensive line fell apart. But before the offensive line fell apart, this team was an absolute buzzsaw. And I think that's what is about to happen again here. I think they're going to win a lot of football games. I think they're going to be petty and spiteful. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this version of the 2024 Kansas City Chiefs demolish some people, be petty about it, and watch a lot of people hate us because they ain't us. That is going to do it for the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
We're getting a 4 count in week 1.
I hope so. Red Sox have 4 right now on the Royals.